Hello, people. This week we went with True Grit. I should have written the author's name down. I apologize. It'll be on the screen in a second. True Grit. Now, I knew this is a movie. I think they made it 2 or 3 times into a movie. But I've never read the book. I've never seen the movie. So I had nothing to compare it to other than knowing it sort of in my mind in that sense that this is a property that they turned it into a movie. It's the only reason it caught my eye. It was there to be read. And so I'm like, let me try it. So I had no sort of pre-idea as to what to expect. The rating here is surprisingly to me a 5 out of 5. This book is stellar. It's stellar. It's not long. It's digestible. People casual, your casual friends who don't like to read, you can recommend them this book. Your friends who are, neck deep in scrolls, in dusty old scrolls they love to read so much, you can recommend it to them and everyone in between. It feeds everything. It feeds everyone. Wonderfully done. I don't own it, but I actually might buy it. That's how good it is. If that means anything to you. It does to me. I feel like readers try and be selective about what they buy. And so if you're telling me, you own such and such book, I'll put more weight on that. That's why I say that. Better not put that over by the microphone. Okay, so what's going on? Why is this book so great? It starts off and it hits the ground at a dead run. It's in first person. Now, if you looked at other videos that I have issues with first person. Not that I don't understand what's happening, but that people don't understand how to use it. They do it poorly. And so, I've sort of railed on some books. I want to say Ancillary Justice. That's the one that comes to mind. But it's not alone. It really isn't. There's a lot of people, a lot of authors, a lot of people who write their stories in this manner. And I understand it's, how do you start a book, right? The start and the end, those are the tricky parts. You sort of in your head know what needs to happen, but where do I grab this? Where do I grab this thread, right? First person seems to be a good way to get in, but they do it so bad. What they do is they'll be like, and I reached for the notebook and I picked it up and I thumbed through the pages, right? And that is what happened. But when I, as a human being, reach for things, I don't narrate like that to myself, right? I'm thinking whatever I'm thinking at the time. I have to go sit down. I have to edit this video in a minute. I want to watch such and such game. And then I'm grabbing things and I'm moving. You can make dinner and be thinking about or listening to the game or looking outside, right? You can do, your mind goes other places and your hands can do things. Well, they seem to forget this or aren't able to grab it or whatever the case is. Add to that sort of how you get dialogue across starts to be a problem too. And this book has none of those problems. 0. And it's an older book and it's a Western, right? But it's weird. Somehow I knew it was a Western. Well, that's what he did. You're describing horses. You're describing, I climbed up on the wagon in just slight passing. But because the way she's telling it, she wants to talk about who was on the wagon, this and that. So you get this, and you get this sort of just a slight flavoring, and your brain just fills in the rest. Your brain just takes over. Even if you haven't watched a bunch of Westerns. Obviously, if you've watched a bunch, it'll fill it in better. But even if you haven't, It becomes almost like if you've ever gone to a play live, right? So when you go see like Hamlet live, they're just simple wooden sort of prop ups in your mind. You just go, that's the castle. And you're like, fine, that's the castle. And you listen to what the actors say. And in your mind, it just sort of melds into what it needs to be. It's kind of like that, but in book form. If you don't have a great visual library already of what Western means. So even if you know nothing, you just carry it along. And I'd say a lot of it, I bet you could. You could sort of twist the story and make it just completely modern. Not in the West at all. I dropped my pen. Not in the West at all. In a modern city, right? That's how it comes across. They're individuals that we're dealing with. And those individuals can exist at any time. It's kind of remarkable. And first line in, she's okay. In spots early on, you can feel that she's a little defensive, right? And you can imagine that whatever events happened in this book, she's recounted these events. You get local fame, right? It didn't have to be nationwide. This didn't historically change anything in the world. But you can become a local celebrity by various reasons. So you can imagine, even before you've read it, whatever happened here, whatever's about to happen, was grand enough that it affected her life after, right? She wouldn't be writing it in first person if she didn't live through it. So you don't have that to worry about. But that you typically don't, because the first character always lives anyway. That's sort of like a rule. So you can feel a bit of defensiveness. So the first line is she's talking about how, because she's 14 when this goes on. And her first line is, some may say that this, shouldn't happen for a 14-year-old. And then she gets into why it was, why this happened the way it happened. Right into it. Right, first line in is a sort of a self-defense of being in the situation at all. And you have to do that. A defense, when you sidetrack, the things you choose to focus on, all are character development, because you don't have the time, or not the time, you don't have the option once you've sort of chosen. I say you don't have the option. Of course, there's no rules. You can write a story any way you want. Typically, if you're going to stay in first person, you don't have the spot to self-describe the character, because people aren't introspective that way. And it'd be odd, unless your character's introspective. But she's not, right? So you use these other opportunities to describe the character to the audience. And you do pick up on it. She is a bit of a firebrand. A frontier woman, independent, strong-minded, this sort of thing, right? She is these things. So she starts the story, and she's like, a man by the name of Tom Chaney shot her father dead. She gives a little back end as to, he was trying to help Tom. They go to sell some horses. Tom gets in some kind of an argument, and the dad tries to stop it, and without any further provocation, he shoots him. He shoots him dead, and now she wants justice. And she's going to make sure it happens. About side points. Which also, you'll be in the middle of something. Riding along a trail, sitting in a wagon, right? Or like she's telling this story. And just divert off and then come back. Those diversions, one, feel natural, but two, really give you a sense of character. It's a way to get out, move about, give me history, and then sort of bring it back. It's very smartly done. She's at one point, she's talking about her dad, that he's very nice. Fought in a war. I think it's a civil war. Fought in the Civil War. Named some battles. And but she makes a point to say he wasn't shot in this. He wasn't wounded in this battle. And she says, unlike like Susie Randall, unlike what Susie Randall says. One little line here or there, but you can feel gossip in town coming back to her and her being offended by it. And so when she sits to write her book, she's making a point to correct it, right? Those are all actions that don't happen in this book. But I can see them in my mind as clear as if they had happened, right? I'm like, that's just good writing. It's just phenomenal writing. She will be religious. I forget her name. Maddie, I want to say. I forget the name. Now I should have written it down. Yes, but I didn't. She's religious. She'll bring up religion. She'll bring up politics. I think she, at one point, she's like, Woodrow Wilson, the greatest Presbyterian president this nation ever had. And those dirty Republicans turned on him, right? This kind of action happens. It's glorious. It's glorious. But it's not going to be a religious book. It isn't preachy to you in any sense like that. It really does feel like you're talking to this individual or reading her book, like her firsthand account. And she's just making a point to get across to you what happened and not trying to embellish. So don't get too flustered about sort of religious undertones or examples here or there. It's not going to delve into that. Doesn't get preachy on you at all. She needs, okay, so she's dealing with it at 14, mind you. She's the one that goes on this trip to this town. She at one point I think she says that there are Latin type people here and that they have a type of she says something to the effect like, they get meats and roll them in a type of dough and cook them. And they call them tamales. She says, I had one. They are quite good. I don't know why. I love that little moment so much. Maybe because I've eaten tamales. I don't know. But it's just the fact that you stop and describe them that way. It was just such a glorious little rounded moment of showing me a character development. It's all throughout this book. It's just really good. So she has to sort of settle things the way they need to be settled before making her way to ensure justice is done upon this Tom Chaney. And in the course of this, she has to sell some raggedy horses that her dad had bought in a scheme to raise horses on their farm. But of course, he's dead now. She wheels and deals as hard as anyone in town. I mean, she twists this shop owner's arm hard. I mean, threatening lawsuits and everything. On lawyer Dackett, I think. She knows a lawyer, and she's willing to just slice you up with him. It's pretty hilarious. Poor shop owner. But she's merciless in that crap. And now that I think about it, I'm like, you put this in this book because you're proud of how you sort of haggled the crap out of that man. That's so funny. She asks around. She wants to know, who would I get to do this sort of hunt Tom Chaney down and haul him back to town? And everyone says, Rooster Cogburn. Yes, they call him Rooster the rest of the time, essentially. Rooster Cogburn is a federal marshal. He works for the judge, and he's going to be in court. So she heads over to court to get a look at him, and then, of course, talk to him after the fact. This is one of the slickest intros to a character I've ever seen. It's just her sitting in court. She goes off on her tangent about Woodrow Wilson. She has another tangent about Alfred Smith, where she's like, her father was like, the only ones who care about us are those New York Democrats, and that's why we were loyal Democrats to Alfred Smith. Alfred Smith, I believe, is a real person. I think he comes up in a biography I read. He's an actual person. He ran for president. Did not win. That was just a fun little historic tidbit for me. I love history, especially right now. I don't know why. Okay, so there's a trial going on. Some people were shot, and the lawyer then calls Rooster Cogburn up to the stand, and as she's seeing him, she's like, well, that's not who I would have picked. I thought he was the younger guy. This is an older guy, about 30, 40, with one eye, so the other has an eye patch. She says, quote, he was built like Grover Cleveland. I don't know why. That made me laugh, right? She didn't say it as a joke, or maybe I think it's kind of supposed to have a humorous slant. You would not expect the hero of your story to be built like Grover Cleveland. I just bust out laughing a little bit. And then she goes on to say, what does she go? She says, in that time, people would say that more men look like Grover Cleveland than not. So it's not an unusual shape. It's just funny to me. How are you going to describe someone like Grover Cleveland? Then she goes, okay, because she got off subject talking about Alfred Smith and politics. So she said, let me return to my story, and I will use the transcript to sort of give you a feel. It's the same feel I got from Rooster Cogburn. Again, this is slick. It allows a change in perspective, while also, again, telling you about this girl, this Maddie. I believe her name's Maddie. The fact that in a story you could just tell that happened to you, you're going out of your way to get a transcript and put that in your book. Again, you are an honest person, and it means something to you, right? You're not just honest and it doesn't matter if people lie about you. I don't know what's happening with this line. You make a point to show yourself honorable to other people, right? Again, character development through these actions. In any case, that's how we introduce our Marshall through this court case. He apparently killed some guys, and the lawyer's trying to get the other guy out. It's very funny. It's a very funny little court interlude, especially if you like court dramas. I think at one point the lawyer was like, and when you stepped back, which direction did you go? And he goes, I usually go backwards when I step back. She goes to his house to sort of talk to him about this deal. He likes to call her baby sister. He's just, he has that way about him, right? Where he's perceptive. Even though he only has one eye, he's perceptive about people. And then he starts to align himself with that interaction, right? So if he gets the sense that you're dangerous, probably, he would act accordingly. Not to be rude, but just to be aware that this thing has teeth. But if you're a 14-year-old girl, be just little sister. That's how I'm going to treat you. This is how this thing needs to go. This is what's best. Rugged, honest person. I say honest. If he's got to smudge this or that, he'll smudge this or that to get a little more pay. But it's not like he goes out of his way to rob from the state. If the state's going to pay for you to get rid of a criminal, but it's going to pay you more for getting rid of him 2 days before rather than 2 days later, he might smudge it, say it's 2 days before. This kind of thing, right? It's not out of hand. But he's never stealing gobs of amounts. You know, you smudge things if it can get you $2 or $3 more. What's the harm? What is it? I don't know if you know where, I feel like in SpongeBob, Sandy Cheeks, she'll do these cool like Southern or Texas kind of sayings, right? What is it? They're closer than 2 skillets in a frying pan. These sort of fun. This book is full of those. And I love every one of them. Isn't it an example? At one point he says, I don't believe you have $50. But if you're hungry, we'll talk it over and make some medicine. How does that suit you? She says, suits me right down to the ground. Very slick. Very cool way to talk. Fun. She hires him for $50 to go find Tom Chaney and bring him back. We enter now LaBeef. That's how he says it. He's from Texas, but it's French. It's like Le Bouf, but he says LaBeef. Slick, good-looking Texas Ranger that she says comes off as arrogant. So she likes him, but then kind of doesn't like him just looking at him. And then, of course, there's friction between them. Because she's very headstrong and people aren't used to that. He's looking for Chaney as well. They sent him because he shot a Texas senator. I swear at some point in this book, somebody says, one Texas Ranger for shooting a senator? And LaBeef answers, he was a little senator. Like that matters. I don't know. One Texas Ranger is probably enough. They were hard-nosed. It's just funny. They're just slick sometimes with their comments. They really are. In any case, he starts talking to her. He seems to have the idea we should all group up and, get these idiots together. And in his head, of course, he's thinking me and Rooster, because he's not thinking a girl should go, especially a 14-year-old girl. But she doesn't like the cut of him, right? So he comes off as arrogant. She already doesn't like him. And then he starts talking, we need to take him back to Texas to hang him for killing this senator. And she's like, I don't want him to hang for shooting a senator. I want him to hang for shooting my father in Tennessee. That's the root of their antagonism to each other. She's very adamant, and she tries to not let him meet Rooster because she thinks Rooster will bring him along for the ride. They end up meeting, obviously. And Rooster gets, I think, the same. At some point, they're talking back and forth, the three of them. And LaBeef is sort of like trying to go, what is it, one of these, you going to let this girl tell you how to run your setup, right? You're trying to be a little sideways with a comment like that, right? You're trying to goad me. Our Rooster picks up on that instantly. And instead of like saying, no, I'm going to do what I do, he just flips around on him. And he's like, I don't know if I like to, I don't think I like the cut of you. This kind of thing, right? So he doesn't get tricked by the side talk. He goes right at the problem. In any case, both of them seem to have an issue with bringing her along. She fights her way in. At one point, I think, they're in Rooster's house, him and the girl, and she gets chased around the table until she finds like his paperwork that gets him paid and threatens to, dunk it in some water. Later, he agrees, right? It's one of these sort of a frontier style thinking, I think, right? Where, unless you're just like a tiny baby, you're young at 14, yeah, but they go, well, I was such and such age when I did whatever I did. You'll try and resist them, but if they push through that, then you're like, well, you've made your choice and we'll just do it this way. That's his thinking. She meets up with LaBeef and they try and then edge her off, right, on a ferry. They're like, take her back. She's a runaway kid. And they're going to pay some guy to do that. She bolts with her horse over the water, sort of threatening to just follow them. That's what she does. She just follows after them for a while until they set up a trap, capture her. And she's still able to argue her way on, right? It's sort of the same argument again where LaBeef will like, I can't take a girl. And she's like, what's the problem? I can ride a horse. I have a gun. Don't worry about it. Well, you're gonna cry. And so like, I've been on hunts before. It's not that big a deal. So she argues back and forth. They eventually just concede. They're gonna let this girl go. Then we get into sort of the hunt itself, which is like any kind of a road trip, right? You have people that they don't really know each other. They have this common purpose. So there's friction at spots. We're talking about Rooster's war record, and Labith's pushing it a little more than he should. Sometimes guys do that. We like to poke. And she notices. She didn't say she notices. But you could tell, you could feel her interaction, her interjection stops a fight before it becomes too serious. We'll get in spots and Rooster, again, very natural like, will go on these long-winded diatribes about his history. He used to run a restaurant, and that's why his wife left him, and she took the kids and this and that, and I'm not built for this, and I got in trouble for that, right? And she says he talks forever. But you can imagine if you're by yourself most of the time, you just think things. And so when you have company, you just start blabbing. That makes sense to me. Tom Chaney's, what is this? He's hooked up with Lucky Ned Peppers. It just brings joy. It just brings me joy, these things. Sort of like a gang. They've robbed a train. They've stolen horses. They're ne'er-do-wells, as they say. At a certain point, we run the main crew down. We stop for rest, and the girl goes to get some water. She goes to get some water. And just by happenstance, right? So Rooster had got sort of drunk leading him. And led him in too close. So that's why when she went to get water, he was getting water in the same spot. And they see each other. She whips the gun out. And the Chaney guy's like, you're not going to shoot me. And he starts just like ignoring her. And she's like, come over here real slow or I will shoot you. He's like, nah, you won't. And then she does. She just shoots him. And I'm like, Jesus. The gun sort of knocks her back a little, but she recovers. It's a big sort of blunderbuss. It's not a blunderbuss. It's just a big gun for her. The Cheney's shot like in the ribs and on the ground. And he goes, I didn't think you'd shoot me. She goes, what do you think now? I'm like, this kid is hard. She tries to shoot him again, but the gun jams. And he, captures her. Takes her back to the other criminals. And the criminals use her. Lucky Ned Peppers uses her to sort of send the radio. Go away or I'll shoot this girl. This kind of thing. A classic. Her interactions with the criminals are fun as well. We end, obviously, in a bit of a shootout. Fairly epic, as far as things go. 4-on-1, Rooster versus 4 criminals. He just rides at him with the reins in his teeth. Very fun. Then some other action, right? Our girl gets stuck in a cave, bit by a snake, this kind of thing. It really, the action's all, even talking by the campfire, feels a lot more than sort of the roots of what we're saying. Just because of the first person. I sort of see you see the power of it. In how fast you can get into a story. And then how invested it can get you. It's very enjoyable. And then it does again, sticking the landing. This is the last sort of hurdle for a 5 out of 5. And it does sort of, in my mind, what a Lord of the Rings does. And it gives you a slow wind down. Right? Because they end up killing Chani, saving the girl. LaBeef hauls Chani's dead body to Texas. His job's done. I said I'd deliver him, and I delivered him. And then you get the sense very quickly, right, like a page or two, that we've gone from I'm a kid, I've recovered from my wounds, to now I'm sort of an adult, and all this time has passed. And she's giving you this about how she's trying to keep up with these two people. That these two people with her went on this adventure. And there's this connection between them, right? So in her mind, we had this connection. LaBeef, she never got in contact with. He went down to Texas and she didn't know much more about him. Could have died. Could have just ended up rich and well off, a rancher. You know, these people can just disappear in this time. But Codburn, she follows a little better. He got in trouble. Lost his marshalship. Tries to go some other place to start a business. That doesn't work. It ends up in the circus. She makes a little commentary about, this is all he was good for in the end. It's not sad, a little melancholy about it, I would say. A little melancholy. But this is sort of what happens. I think Victor David Hanson was talking about this one time, where he says, you have certain rules your society runs by. Then war happens, and those rules aren't going to win you the war. So you go outside the bounds and find people that can win you the war. And they win the war, but then after, you try and go back, and they're outside. They're too brash, they're too hard, they're too vicious. Whatever the thing is that won the war is then what ostracizes them in a way. And he makes the connection to Patton and MacArthur, etc. And I thought about that when she was like, he had to join a circus. Here is a gunslinger. He was big in the, not big in the war. He flourished in a war because you're allowed to shoot people. And then he flourished when the Old West was wild. Because he could see and read people, and he knew when they were bad or good, and he would make a decision, and he had the luck of the draw, as they say. But then afterwards, where things are moderning out and everything's settling, and then we have these relics. We have these relics that we needed to build our world, but now we don't need once the world is built. I got that sense, right? But she never gets to re-meet him. But she does, right? She moves his body to his hometown and gives him a better tombstone. She does, what did they say? Does right by him. And so ends the tale. Perfect ending, too. It's just a great book, people. Just go read it. Full of these great interactions. Full of these great scenes. It's a 5 out of 5, people. It really is. I was shocked. I just didn't expect. Okay. That's True Grit. And these are our ads. Are my books as good as True Grit? Should you buy my books over True Grit? I think my books will be cheaper than True Grit. So save $4. But better? I gotta be honest, maybe they're not. Right? I gotta be honest. True Grit's very good. My books are fun. I have more variety. I give myself that. Okay. There they are. If you want to buy them, you'll help the channel and own a book. If you don't, that's also fine. I'll keep making these videos. I have to run and go edit this because I'm running late. I'll see you all next week.